All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So, we're here today to talk about competency-based practice. My name is Kate. I'm Director of Strategic Partnerships at Learner-Centered Collaborative, and just thrilled to be here and thrilled to have this conversation with these brilliant leaders who are joining us today. I'm going to ask each of the leaders to share a little bit, just a quick introduction, your name, your school context, your role, and maybe like a core value or belief that really underlies your leadership practice. So let's hear first from Melissa.
Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa Olson. I am in Spring Lake Park School District, which, as it shares, is right outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we're just about 10 minutes. We are a public school district, PK through 12. We have about just shy of 6,200 students, with 4 elementary schools, an intermediate school, middle school, and high school. My role is I'm Director of Learning Design and Student Engagement for the school district. And I think a value that I try to bring to my leadership is a value of equity as well as design, because I think that the only way in which we can actually change our practices around equity is through strong design. So thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much, Melissa. Thrilled to have you with us. I'm going to pass over to Wendy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Wendy Fairon. I am the Executive Director of Chico Country Day. We are a TK through 8 public charter school north of Sacramento. And let's see, I really love supporting a space where what we hope for and value for students is also the culture that we create for adults.
Parallelism. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. And then Sharon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon Stanley. I'm the director of Compass Academy, which is a student-selected high school in a pre-K through 12 plus district in Illinois, in St. Charles, Illinois. And I I would say something that I always keep in mind as a leader is I want everyone, all stakeholders, everyone to have a voice, feel included, supported, and heard.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Beautiful vision, Sharon. I love those values. All right. I'm going to share a little bit about some context for our time together today, and want to make sure that folks who are joining us today are tracking in your Zoom bar that you should be able to see a resources tab where we're going to be sharing resources that you might want to check out and have access to as we go along. So be sure to check that out. There's also a Q&A feature in the webinar, and we'll be, if you want to populate your questions as we go, we're going to have a nice spacious time at the end to try to answer as many questions as we can. Again, my name is Kate, work for Learner-Centered Collaborative. This vision statement is one of the reasons that I was excited to apply for this role and feel honored to get to work at LCC, which is that we're trying to create education ecosystems where all learners really know who they are, figure out how to thrive in community, and actively engage in the world as their best selves. And our ecosystem approach is how we think about school and school system ecosystems. And you can see that learners are at the center of this. We start by articulating the outcomes that we want for young people. What are the knowledge and skills and dispositions that we hope they cultivate during their time with us? And that next circle is the learning model or the learning experiences. And competency-based practice is a really core part of how we envision learning experiences and a lever we see for getting whole learner outcomes to be realized with young people. We're also going to put in the resources a link to our competency-based reporting playbook. If you have already seen this, wonderful. If not, this is a really rich resource. If you're wanting to really nerd out and go deep into some of the weeds, we're going to be a bit more zoomed out in our conversation today. But if you're looking for more follow-up and just a deeper dive into lots of different elements of this practice, this is a great resource to check out. So please do. So today we're going to hear 3 stories from Wendy and Melissa and Sharon. They're going to talk about their own approach in their systems and in their communities to make some of these shifts On the left-hand side of these shifts, you see sort of a more traditional grading paradigm, for example, moving from points and percentages, giving on assignments, to really thinking about levels of proficiencies that are given on very clear learning outcomes. Another shift is having lots of different factors average into a final grade, like classwork and participation and quizzes and tests over time, moving from there over to really emphasizing the most recent evidence that we have of what kids know and are able to do, and reporting on those separately so that we have clarity about which skills kids are progressing in and which skills they might need some more support with. And then finally, this last shift where in a more traditional paradigm, we see assessments that are typically like tests or essays. We typically see product rubrics with like, did you do your poster and was your handwriting neat? And did you include 10 photos? We're trying to move away from those types of product rubrics and tests as assessments to really expanding our view of where and when and how we can assess, finding lots of opportunities to collect evidence of what students know, really valuing performance assessments, observation, and assessing projects on the outcomes, the learning outcomes, not on some of those product-oriented features. So again, we're going to hear 3 different stories today of 3 different approaches. This looks different in lots of different places, depending on the humans who are involved, depending on the needs of the community. And this work is, as you know, I'm sure you're here because you have an interest in thinking about these shifts, and it's super complex. So we're going to do our best to learn from the stories of these 3 leaders who we have with us today. And we're going to kick it off with Melissa at Spring Lake Park. Oh, and let me frame as we hear from our panelists, what I'd like you to think about are, most importantly, one, what was it that inspired your shift to a competency-based teaching, learning, and assessment paradigm? And then can you share with us some of the artifacts or resources that will give us a sense of how you're approaching this? What are you assessing? How are you assessing it? What kind of tools are you using? What are the sort of key considerations that are top of mind for you as you think about the work and how it's coming to life in your system? So let's kick it off with Melissa.
Okay, so I'm going to do my best to summarize some of the really big shifts that have happened in our district since 2012, 13, which is really when this work started, which was actually before I was even part of Spring Lake Park Schools. And that was really a vision for innovative and personalized learning. And then within that vision for innovative and personalized learning, it was really a conversation around how can we make sure that we bring this to all students so that we are really meeting students where they are and honoring the whole human. And on this slide that's in front of you right now, I think one of the things that makes SLP unique is that culture of innovation and design that we have around everything, not just competency-based learning. So we have an innovation model of kind of let's try it, let's just do it, let's build it. And all of that innovation mindset and that culture of design has really helped us get to the point where we're at. And actually, if you can just back up one more, Kate, I just wanted to highlight 2 things on this slide. So on the right side, you can see what we feel like are the 4 components of our innovative and personalized learning. And the reason that those are infinity circles and have the design engaging student work and learning through the middle is because we really see them as interconnected pieces, and that design as being at the heart of how we get to those different pieces. Knowing that competency-based learning is largely dependent on flexible learning environments, and all of that is dependent on knowing your who and the learner profiles and their next steps in learning, which is the learner map. And then, as I mentioned, that 3D design process of discover, design, and deliver is really integral to everything that we do. And you can hop to the next one. And that design is really how we got to the place of what we assess in terms of the competencies that we have. So we have academic competencies and we also have career and life competencies. We have rubrics written for both our academic and our career and life from K through 12, grade banded rubrics. And that design mindset and culture really came to life in the writing of the rubrics. We sent open invitations to all of our teachers to be a part of a competency-based learning cohort. And we ended up with about 40 teachers that were our part of our initial learning cohort that helped us develop our theory of action around competency-based learning. And since we started that journey, which was in 2019, we've had over 150 teachers participate in writing the rubrics to get at what are those levels of proficiency. And it's been incredible conversations. And I think that is really how we had the momentum and the change, is having so many different humans involved in writing those rubrics and really talking about like what matters for each content area, what matters around those career and life competencies. How do we make sure that as we're describing what matters, that we're really using the definition of what a competency is around those depth of knowledge, 3 or higher, interdisciplinary, transferable pieces. So those, I don't think we would be at the place we were at without that culture of innovation and participation from so many of our amazing staff. So here is a super quick overview of our competency framework, which is we have our, this happens to be a science competency that shows what the grade 3-4 band is in terms of a rubric. We've done a lot of work, like I said, with our teachers to identify which of our state level benchmarks are already embedded in the rubrics. And then following the work of like Rose Colby and Karen Hess, we use learning progressions as well. And have done a lot of work again with our teachers identifying what they feel like we refer to as Tetris pieces, the learning progressions, kind of those maybe might be lower level DOK 1 and 2 skills, but still really imperative that we need to make sure students have so that it doesn't catch up to them later. So we assess learning progressions differently than our rubrics. Those we assess with like a got it, not yet. And they're more formative and ongoing and help us determine if students are on track. And then the rubrics really are attached to any other piece of evidence that we have that we're capturing as part of the overall body of evidence. Our current life competencies obviously are assessed differently because we want students to be involved in the assessment. And so these are I can statements in which they're used more as a reflection tool and a chance for students to think about their own kind of goals and how they might engage in those career and life competencies, both inside and outside of school. So they help inform the learner profile as well of a student, and are really used more as like talking points with families. So they aren't assessed in terms of like contributing towards a letter grade. They're really more about the learning and intentionality in which how do these show up when we're designing units of learning. So sorry. Okay. And then I mentioned this a little bit already, the difference between our academic competencies and our career and life competencies. And with our academic competencies, the rubric levels are beginning and progress proficient extending, where again, then we don't believe that you ever just become proficient at career and life competencies. And so our viewpoint is that that's more like I'm emerging, I'm progressing, I'm consistent, knowing that those can change dramatically when the context around us changes. And then we do report K6, we report using our rubrics and our career and life competencies. The rubric criteria is what we report at that level to families, both on track needs attention, as well as actually like how are students progressing along the different rubric categories, knowing that it might take them 1 or 2 years to get to the point of being proficient, because competencies are those bigger learning goals that are going to take more time. And then we also report at the secondary level on our rubric criteria, and we do transfer that into a letter grade at the 7 through 12, and we have kind of a grading guide that is a little bit more nuanced, 7, 8, and 9, 12. I think on the next slide, it shows the 7, 12 one, but we primarily use that at 7, 8. We have a little bit more nuance at the 9, 12 level. And again, just really trying to emphasize that those grades or reporting is point in time reporting, and that we are constantly working towards a body of evidence. We've done a lot of work with our teachers on identifying and building in more performance assessments, using the most recent pieces of evidence, and really thinking about what is that overall body of evidence, as Kate mentioned, with that paradigm shift for reporting, and then really making the rubrics a primary focus of how we're constantly tagging different pieces of evidence to that. And then, of course, doing a lot of communication with our families around what does this all mean and why are we doing this. So that's a very, very quick overview of where we've been for the last many years. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Melissa, thank you so much. It's so impressive to hear in particular, like around this culture of innovation and participation and the sheer number of people who touched the work and were part of the rubric creation process. It's really, really impressive and so critical for getting educators to buy in and to feel like, yes, this is something I want to use in my assessment because I've touched it, I felt it, I've given feedback, I was part of its creation. So really, really cool to hear that part of the story. All right. And again, we're going to have a chance for Q&A at the end. So as we go, we're going to hear from all three of the panelists. So go ahead and jot down questions that are coming up. And if you do have a specific question for a specific panelist, I'll do my best to make sure we get those into the space and can chat about them at the end of our time together. We're going to move to hear from Wendy now and her story at Chico Country Day.
Alrighty. Thanks, Melissa, for getting us started. I wrote down a few notes. Looking forward to learning from you too, Sharon. All right. It's kind of how we got here. In maybe 2013 or so, we started utilizing project-based learning. And I remember working with teachers at that time, and they were feeling very excited about their exhibitions of learning and all of the great work that students were doing. And then they felt very like this tension around trying to fit it into one box in our Aries report card. And I think I have a screenshot of that on the next slide, but we're, just doing this incredible work and all these amazing projects, and then feeling really stuck with our current reporting system. And so that was kind of the start of some change. Could we add some narratives? What else could we be doing? And so that reporting piece of it felt really important. And also, how do we reflect all of the ways that students learn on campus? We do a lot of social emotional learning, a lot of support of kids in a variety of ways, and it just really wasn't being captured in our current reporting system. In about 2020, we started working with LCC actually on our learner profile. And as we got that really situated, then we started to think about how are we going to assess and report on the progress within our learner profile. So all these questions are kind of swirling around. And, first, I think one of the most important things that we did with the learner profile is set up what it looks like at various grade bands. And those became our competencies. And then we got really clear on our academic content standards. As we began to build more and more projects, we noticed that there was maybe a lack of clarity across grade levels of how do we know what students are learning in each grade level? What are our essential standards? How do they build across our whole system? How do we calibrate together in grade level teams and across the school to know what meeting and surpassing looks like? What do we do when students are emerging or practicing? And so building out our rubrics and getting really clear on what these standards look like is helping our whole system, helping us gain clarity, and also helping, we have a lot of support teachers as well who work with our students. And so by creating the rubrics and getting really clear on things, we're able to utilize the support that the other teachers are giving as well. So here's an example of, I think it's a first grade academic standard and how it looks with emerging, practicing, meeting, and surpassing. And then the student-friendly language of just kind of the general, what does our EPMS scale look like? So students are familiar with that as well. And then I think the next one, this is how we're reporting it back to parents. So just a couple of quick little snapshots of what parents see. They will see standards broken up. So it's by the, kind of the major heading. And then we also have the standards that were assessed during that reporting period. And where I started, and then their most recent rating. So parents are seeing that level of detail for how their students are doing. We also are incorporating the mathematical practices. across most grade levels at this point. I would see maybe in the next year or two that we'll do mathematical practices across, all of the grade levels. I think next we're going to look at the learner profile. So this is how we built out, and in talking with families too, we talked about the rubrics and academic standards, and we talked about our EPMS scale, and then we also were talking about the competencies and how we're rating students kind of within these levels. And so, for level 1 of responsibility, we're looking at TK in kindergarten. Level 2 would be by the end of 2nd grade, level 3 by the end of 5th grade, and level 4 by the end of 8th grade. So it creates a lot of clarity for students and parents and teachers of like what this progress looks like over time. Our teachers built all of this. We have 5 elements of our outcomes on our learner profile, and then we have between 3 or 4 competencies within each one. And then different groups of teachers have built out what those different levels look like across the grade levels. It's also an adapting document. We just did a big revision over the summer. And so now we have our most current version, but it is kind of shifting and changing. We realized that our original language around this was maybe a little tough for our TK kindergarten 2nd grade to attain. And so we did a little bit of shifting. And then even on our reporting platform now, we added a level 5, although we don't have it clearly defined everywhere. It is for students who are, even surpassing like the 8th grade mark of where we would expect them to be. And I think I have next would be, yep, this is what parents see. So the great part about the reporting that we're able to do right now is that students are actually practicing and being assessed on learner profile competencies in lots of different settings across campus in their core academic classes, but also in their specialist classes, or even I see an opportunity, we haven't done this yet, but some of us meet with groups of students for restorative circles, and I could really see where like we could at times give like a community rating on like, their ability to solve problems and listen to a variety of perspectives. And so I see an opportunity where there could be ratings in different areas across campus, which I'm pretty excited about. And this was just kind of a graphic that we shared with families so they could see content standards and then learner profile competencies and how the learner profile competencies are building over time. And then the content standards also building over time, but we're looking for that meeting and surpassing as well. So just to kind of help support parents, I've noticed that is something that we're doing a lot of communication about why make this shift, how might it benefit students, what were we communicating with kind of an old paradigm or maybe the structures that they were used to, what was missing in the A, B, C, D, F situation. And so we've spent a lot of time communicating with families. I think I just kind of gave a little overview of some of the ways that we've communicated this shift with families on the next slide. Oh, sorry, the one after that. I've done some video overviews, kind of walking families through our documents that we send home. We have sent a feedback survey link with every time we've sent home our student PLPs. That's their report that the families receive. We have all sorts of social media posts. We've done in-person meetings. I still think there's more that we need to do. But this was to try to help us get started on communicating this shift to parents, because that's a really big change. And then just back one, Kate, sorry, went a little bit out of order. One thing that our staff has been working on this year is getting really clear on our assessment philosophy. And I think that there's a document that I shared as well. If not, I can make sure I share it with you. But that's been really helpful too in the conversations that we've been able to have across grade levels with the rubrics and the learner profile, and also having our assessment philosophy articulated has been super helpful.
Amazing. Wendy, I so appreciate especially in like your later slides, your storytelling about what families see in terms of reporting. The slide with the image from your assessment philosophy, trying to help build shared understanding about the mindset shifts that are really necessary to think differently within a competency-based paradigm. And I know all three of you, and I'm sure everyone on this call can really relate to the immense challenge that it is to bring people along, to build that shared understanding, to help people adopt some new mindsets that are really necessary to be able to sort of shed how we've done things for a century plus in schools and to really think differently about teaching and learning and assessment. So love how you're emphasizing the efforts that you're making as a school leader to communicate clearly with families and to engage them in the process. It's super cool to hear about. All right, we're going to kick it over to Sharon at Compass for our last story, and then the long-awaited Q&A will be open. So be thinking about questions that you have for particular panelists or in general. But Sharon, let's hear your story at Compass.
First, thank you, Melissa and Wendy. I also really enjoyed hearing about your journeys. So we started Compass Academy. I already told you about our school. So just why we made the shift to competency-based and how we got started. We are a student-selected high school that is small by design within a larger pre-K through 12 plus, meaning transition program included, district in a Chicago suburb. And we have two comprehensive high schools that are around 2,000 students each. And they provide that traditional high school experience with, very similar to the schools we probably went to 20, 30 years ago. It was very evident that there was a need for something different. And I was lucky enough to be part of a team that we had some district leaders who were looking at, I have this quote on here because this was used in the presentation that went to the Board of Ed, just looking at needing to revolutionize the system. And we wanted to start with one place, one school, and really provide a personalized learning experience, a responsive learning experience for students who, especially the students who felt that their needs weren't being met for lots of reasons, but also looking through the research on competency-based and how that really provides the opportunity for students to be creative, be innovative, have personalized learning. And so we had the approval from the board to proceed. I had a year to figure everything out to get us going. And so I worked with community members, all stakeholders. I had different groups that I met with each week to get ideas and to share my ideas. And, that was how we got started. So we're in year 5 right now. And what we assess for growth, so we have 2 different things that we assess. Because we are in a district, we're unique in that we are the only competency-based school in the district. So we are having to measure growth the way that we would in a competency-based system, but then provide credits to students on a transcript because we're a high school. So we have our assessment for growth on the core competencies, and those are those transferable interdisciplinary skills, right? And so I'll talk more about this on a different slide, but that's one element that we are measuring through 4 years of high school. And then we also have our course competencies, which are aligned with state standards. So every class has identified course competencies, and I have them linked in there. We don't need to look at them, but every class has those identified, and they are aligned with state standards. So there we go. Yeah. Within the seminar, within each class, students are demonstrating proficiency toward meeting competency or demonstrating proficiency on those course competencies. And I will explain more on a different slide how we measure that, but we use 3 different marks for that, and I'll show you that on a different slide as well. So we have 2 different levels of proficiency depending on what we're measuring. If we're looking at those core competencies, we're measuring that growth, like I said, over 4 years. So I have a screenshot of one of our rubrics for communicating and presenting. And that shows throughout each seminar. This could be throughout the whole year, in 1 year, then to the next for 4 years. Teachers are marking growth on that, and that is tracked for students so they can see they're also reflecting on their own growth. But then the course competencies are what we are measuring in one seminar or one class, and that is what is reported on the report card for credits to be put on the transcript. So it's a little bit complicated, but we make it work. So something that I haven't heard anyone else mention, but something that is really, we worked with Rose Colby when we were getting started. We did a lot of work with her, and my teachers worked with her, and we did a lot of training and a lot of just professional learning around competency-based instruction and assessment. And we talked about that idea of approaching competency. So we have a mark called approaching competency that goes on a transcript, can go on a report card. But our students, unlike most high schools, if they have that at the end of a quarter or a semester, they can still change that. We have that not yet model, which is really an integral part of competency-based model, is that we don't all demonstrate learning, we don't all grow at the same rates. So we provide students the opportunity to continue to try to demonstrate that learning and the growth that they need to earn a course credit through a process that we have called a COVE, which it's too much to get into, but it's a process that has been working for students. So the way we report for internal use is through a Schoology gradebook, and parents can see if students are on pace, behind pace, etc., to meet throughout the course. But at the end, we have quarterly reports that are either approaching competency, meets, or exceeds. We also use Mastery Transcript, and since we are a high school, our students have, they have transcripts that have to be sent to colleges, and we are part of the Mastery Transcript Consortium. So this just is a screenshot showing you what the student's Mastery Transcript might look like. Their core competencies are, if you see that graphic on the left, those are the core competencies that this student really pursued. And then they have artifacts within a digital portfolio that are highlighted on the right. So this gets put into a PDF along with their traditional transcript. So once again, it's a little more complicated for us because we're the only competency-based school in the district. So that colleges can see this along with a traditional listing of courses and their grades if they received them at the comprehensive high school. Something I just wanted to highlight that is really an exciting part of this that students really look forward to is their celebration of learning at the end of the semester. They invite guests, they invite family members, they invite fellow students, teachers, former teachers, and they go through and they talk about their growth as a student. And it's one of my favorite parts of every semester. It's something I look forward to. And students have told me that, and have told us that they used to dread the end of the semester because of final exams. And now they love this. They look forward to celebrating their learning and sharing their projects and sharing their growth.
All right. Amazing. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here so we can see everybody. We're going to shift gears a little bit. That was a lot to take in. Thank you so much to all three of you for giving us this bird's eye view and getting us a little bit in the weeds about what you're assessing, how you're assessing it, these proficiency scales that you're using, rubrics that you're using, reporting strategies and tools that you're using. So I'm sure participants have a lot swirling right now and would love to open up. You can use the Q&A feature in the webinar. It should be at the bottom of your Zoom panel in the webinar. Love to open up to some questions. While we're waiting for folks to get the juices flowing with questions, I did see one in the chat a little bit earlier, and I think it came in from Taylor, Melissa, while you were speaking. And Taylor's asking, how are the grades entered in an online grade book, or are they entered in a grade book? Do you want to start with that, Melissa? And we can talk a little bit about entering grades and what that process looks like.
Yeah, of course. So at the K-6 level, our teachers enter the rubric, the corresponding where students are at with their body of evidence at point in time using lift learning. And then that is uploaded into our student information system, which is Campus, so for a like more report card, a PDF style report card. And then at the secondary level, we use Schoology, Schoology Mastery. You can see the gradebook side and Schoology Mastery so that parents can actually see along the way. At our grades 7, 8 in particular, we just show, we don't have percentages turned on, which is nice because then it can really be focused on the different rubric levels. And then at the secondary, they also, or sorry, high school, they also use Schoology Mastery. And then again, we then take that information and put it into Campus, which is our SIS system. At the high school in particular, the transcript with the letter grade is very, very important for students. I wish it wasn't. We have a lot of students who rely on scholarships. We have a lot of students who rely on discounts on car insurance or other things. And those letter grades, unfortunately, are still really powerful in the world around us. And so we wanted to make sure that as we made these shifts, we were still providing that for students. Hopefully, I answered the question with that.
Yeah, I think so. I'm curious, Sharon, to hear from you as you know you've been exploring this mastery transcript universe and the this challenge that Melissa is mentioning about sort of the reality of the status quo in our systems and how much grades are valued. Do you have anything to add about what it's been like to navigate that space with the mastery transcript?
Yes, thanks for asking because we do not give letter grades. We and it is it has been there's been a learning process for people, whether it's parents or community members, but especially thinking about colleges. But the Mastery Transcript Consortium, they are wonderful to work with. I'm not doing an ad for them. I just want everyone to know they're really great to work with because they have a liaison who works with colleges to explain what mastery learning really is and how not having a letter grade doesn't mean that they haven't met or exceeded a standard. So what I will say is for us, we don't have letter grades for our courses. We have not had any student not be accepted at college where they wanted to go because of that, because they either have engaged with Mastery Transcript already and understand how it works, or they communicate with me and I explain it. That I will say for scholarships, thank you for mentioning that, Melissa, because that is a challenge with some schools that still want there to be some sort of metric, right, that they can calculate. So we do have a formula that the district has approved that we can share with colleges if needed, so that our students have access to scholarships, and if they need that metric.
Great, thank you. A lot of interesting complexities there, and a lot of interesting and important questions of equity too, as we think about ensuring that students have access to opportunity, and as we're trying to push on a new paradigm and sort of push into what's possible here. There's a question in the Q&A. This person is asking, do you feel like you have a lot of documents and paper to sift through to assess competencies and make report cards? Wendy, do you want to take that one first, and then we can sort of see if other folks want to respond to it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think it's somewhat similar for our context. Our system where teachers are entering things, I think, is a little bit less intuitive or user friendly as like maybe an Aries or kind of a traditional gradebook. I think one of the things that's been a little bit heavier of a lift is just creating all of those rubrics and really seeing like which standards they're assessing and maybe even taking standards or taking assessments from the curriculum and adjusting those assessments so that they're actually addressing what the teachers are hoping. I think that's the heavier lift, not necessarily like the documentation and things in our progress report.
Mm. Curious, Melissa or Sharon, if you have thoughts about, this is sort of a refrain that I think we hear a lot in systems that are especially in the earlier phase of making the shift about like the amount of paper to sift through or teachers feeling overwhelmed or having concerns about time. Curious how you navigate these challenges in your systems for either of you.
I can speak to that. For us at the high school level, so much of what our students do ends up being shared digitally through their portfolio. So I don't think it's too much for teachers to sift through. I think they appreciate that that whole not yet piece of it where it's like there's a lot of revision and maybe not as much paper to sift through, to be honest, because there's the students are doing that deeper learning and really applying their knowledge. And so the way it's measured is different from, a series of worksheets and a series of activities. It's demonstrated for us, at least through project-based learning. So a lot of it is in a portfolio and is easy to track.
Thanks, Sharon. Melissa, any other thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I don't know if I'm going to be candidly, I think there's some things that feel easier to people and some things that feel harder. I think what we've realized through this shift is that unfortunately what we report on is what also gets emphasized in the design of learning, fortunately or unfortunately. And so I think having the shift to the rubrics and really getting clear and using the rubrics constantly across K-12 is really positive, and that there's a consistency there for both students, families, and teachers. And we're still not at the point where we're reaping the benefits of that collective efficacy yet. I mean, we're only roughly a year and a half into our reporting journey with this. But I'm hopeful that we will reap the benefits of that efficacy, collective efficacy. But I think as far as like, I don't know that there's more paper or more things, but it does require us to think differently about what we're assessing and why we're assessing it. And that is a shift that takes longer. To Sharon's point, I think like having the not yet and using competencies for multiple opportunities to demonstrate learning, I think those things feel better because we're really pushing on like, if students are going to have another opportunity at that competency, like, how do we don't have to necessarily go back and have them do an arbitrary retake. Like we're really trying to shift some of that. And I think, right, at this point, I think we're doing really good work at shifting the individual teacher classroom practices, and we're working hard to shift the overall structures and systems. And that part feels slower, and the reporting systems aren't always like super intuitive. So, I mean, just being candid, there's like things that are, I think, easier about it and things that are harder about it.
I think we're at such an interesting inflection point with the technology. And as we have AI and generative AI and lots of just, as we know, incredibly rapidly accelerating capacity in that space, I think what we're going to see in these platforms is going to shift powerfully and positively from the user experience and the consumer for those who are reading it, parents and students as well. So yeah, there's a lot, I think that's on the horizon that's exciting there. Melissa, you talked a little bit about the beyond just having paper, really, it's more about mindsets and adopting new mindsets. And we have a question about working with veteran teachers in pursuing shifts like this and what strategies any of you might have to think about helping to facilitate a shift in mindset. Does anyone want to jump on that question?
I mean, I feel like I just talked, but I mentioned this when I was sharing our kind of our overview. I do think inviting all to be a part of the work, to be a part of the conversation. And then, like I said, we use that design process. So part of our design process is we have a design team, but the design team is responsible for getting feedback from what we call the A group, which is any teachers who are not on the design team. And then also in that A group, feedback is usually like students and families. And I think that has really helped with the shift. I think that we've actually found that a lot of our veteran teachers are really ready for a shift. They see the need for a shift. They've been in education long enough to know that there needs to be a shift. Sometimes it's our younger teachers that have a harder time making the shift because they might be new to the classroom, or they didn't experience learning in that way. And so I think that's always, I haven't found, at least in our district, that there's like one age group that is like more willing to do it. I think it's been kind of all over the map. And so trying to find the entry point for that particular teacher, like what might, for some it was, we really emphasized like find your entry point. Maybe your entry point is around career and life competencies. Maybe it's being part of rubric writing. Maybe it's around performance assessment. And I think offering some choice into that entry point also really helped with the shift.
Well,
Awesome.
I totally agree with you. I see that as well. And I think our teachers who are really familiar with their grade level content and what the expected outcomes are for students have a bit of an advantage. And some of our younger teachers who are becoming more familiar with the grade level standards and maybe have only taught that one grade level, the learning, there's a little bit more depth of learning that needs to happen for them in a different way.
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead, Sharon.
Oh, I was just going to say that I it's okay if you want to move on. I was just going to agree, but also say that I was lucky in that when we opened, I was able to have people apply who were interested in teaching in the competency-based model. So, but I agree that the younger teachers did struggle more with it, because for them, they didn't have as much experience with all the different, we, we, we have many different levels within one class because which is similar to elementary, I suppose, but not typical for high school. We do not have leveled classes. So we could have 9th through 12th grade in one class. And also it's not, honors or AP or whatever it's whatever that topic is they're studying. So that shift for my veteran teachers, they were ready for it because they chose this and had experience. But for the younger teachers, it was really challenging to think about how to differentiate for a high school class and then to make sure that we were hitting the different levels that we needed to challenge them aligned with those grade level competencies.
Mm. There's a question here that's sort of related to this conversation that we're having about the shifting the conversation to a competency-based assessment, especially within a high-stakes testing state where they have to pass to graduate. Curious if anyone has any insights in response to sort of layering in that question to the mindsets question. And I'll start by putting in my own 2 cents here as you all are sort of thinking about this. This question makes me think about, I think, a sort of fallacy that often surfaces in this space, which is like sort of anxiety about how are students going to perform academically. And actually, a shift, in my opinion, and I think this is probably shared on this call, a shift to a competency-based paradigm really ups the rigor of academics because we're really clear about what we're trying to learn and how we're learning it. And we can hopefully have really good visibility into the specific skills kids are working on and need more help with. And so actually, we should start to see really strong correlations between better academic outcomes and a competency-based paradigm is sort of how I think about that. I'm curious, anyone has anything to add there?
Yeah, I would concur with what you just said. I will say that we are not you have to pass the state exam to graduate state, but it is they take the ACT as that is the test that they have to take, and it's a graduation requirement to take it. And so we are measured by that. And what we have seen, particularly in areas with reading and writing, our students are exceeding the other district high schools because it is across the curriculum. It's in every class, and it's such a part of what we do. They do so much reflection, and then they do analysis, and they do feedback. And so, but also, I hear from students all the time when they start here in their first semester, they're like, everyone said it would be harder, that there was more rigor, but I didn't, like they weren't really sure. They didn't necessarily believe it until they experienced it because you have to meet the standard on everything instead of like, I met here, I didn't meet here, I'm somewhere in between. For us, you have to meet on everything or exceed in order to earn credit. And that's a much higher threshold.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only thing I would add to what's already been said, I mean, we certainly have, again, just we're not a super high stakes state, but we give the ACTs, our Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments, MAP testing, is because we're in the early stages of this, we're doing a lot of triangulation. So we bring in data teams, we look at how are students faring on learning progressions and rubrics? What is that? What are we seeing on the state level tests? So that we really can be kind of keeping an eye on like that triangulation of the different data. And that is helping us, I think, with communicating to families. And also that's helped honestly with just a lot of really great open communication and partnership with our state level Department of Education.
Thanks, Melissa. That's helpful context. All right, we're coming to the end of our time here. I'm gonna elevate one last question and then start to close us out and share. And if you didn't get your question answered through this, please know that we want to hear from you. We're happy to continue the conversation, and we'll give you some information about how to do that at the end. There's a question about portfolios and like best practices for creating portfolios with kids. The question was also about platforms. So curious if folks have any advice about supporting learners to create portfolios as part of this shift to competency-based.
We're not currently utilizing portfolios, so I'll see if Melissa or Sharon have something to say for that. Our platform has shifted. We used a different platform a few years ago. We have a newer platform now. There are challenges within it, and in talking with other school leaders, it sounds like that's kind of typical. There isn't like a solution that fits all of the needs, although we do have opportunities to share things like our learner profile competencies. And then I thought I saw a question about like early literacy skills. Our platform has built in like some really great concept trackers that align to our EL skills block reading curriculum. And so we've been able to get really clear with families on how students are progressing through their benchmark assessments and through their weekly cycles. So there are bright spots, but also challenges.
I would echo bright spots and challenges. I mentioned we are using Lift Learning at the K-6 level, but and you can do kind of some, like it does follow the student. So it has a lot of like features that I think are positive from that standpoint. We don't have parents in yet on that. And kids aren't really using it. They are in a couple pilot places. So we're learning from that. We are also doing a little bit of a pilot with Spaces EDU. This at our secondary level, like having our high school students really own the creation of a portfolio that is their learner profile. I'm excited to see where that goes because my understanding is that they can take it with them when they leave. And so we think about like them being able to use it for kind of the post-secondary planning. That sounds exciting. So we haven't found like a magic system yet. Those are some of the ones that we're using along with the Schoology Mastery piece. And then just a note that I did answer the foundational reading question in the Q&A. So hopefully Taylor can see my written response on that one.
Perfect. Thanks, Melissa.
I will say we do use portfolios, but I agree with both Wendy and Melissa. There's not a perfect, we haven't found the perfect platform for that yet. We use Mastery Transcript, and that is the students can put artifacts in there that they feel are really demonstrating their strengths. So they pull from their portfolio, but right now we're using Google Sites for their portfolio. For the same reason, they can take it with them when they leave, but then also they can pick from that to put in what they want to highlight for colleges or whatever their post-secondary plan is.
Awesome. Yeah. Fantastic. And I think portfolios are such a powerful lever that we have, especially in this conversation about shifting mindsets and about the sort of overwhelm that can occur during the shift. It's a great way to put so much of the onus and the agency on the shoulders of learners to say, show us evidence of what you're working on and evidence of your growth and compile that for us. And whether it's a Google site or it's a fancy platform or it's a set of slides, there's lots of ways to make that thinking and learning visible. I'd like to take a moment now just to have some final reflection from our participants. I'm going to share my screen again. And I'd love for us to just put in the chat a quick little pause and reflect. What is something that resonated with you? Maybe that's top of mind for you based on the stories you heard from our three panelists about their own journeys on this competency-based adventure. Let's just take a moment to put a couple of reflections in the chat so we can build some shared understanding in the space together. And while we're waiting for those, just want to remind everyone too that we will be sending out the resources, the link to with the recording of this webinar and all of the associated resources. You'll be getting those in an email, so stay tuned for those. Mike is saying feels positive to be on the right track and struggling with the same things. Absolutely. I think our struggles are shared in this space, and it's so important that we join forces to learn from one another. Big picture competencies, course competencies. Yeah, so important to articulate what are the outcomes? What do we want kids to learn? If we don't start there, it's going to be a confusing process to go through. Chris is saying one size does not fit all. Absolutely. It's about really like designing with communities so that we're creating things that fit in the unique context. Important for schools to realize that their context is unique. Yeah, absolutely. That seems like a shared reflection here. It's not gonna be a one size fits all. Perhaps as much as we wish that there was an easy quick guide of a step one, step two, and the reality is that this does look different based on where you're at. I'm going to actually have Paul put in the chat a survey. We'd love to hear your feedback about this experience today. We use your feedback to design future webinars and to try to put together learning experiences that meet the needs of the folks who are interested in joining us. So please take a moment to fill that out. And I'm going to pass it back for like a 30-second final word to each of you, Wendy, Melissa, and Sharon. We'll go in that order. 30 seconds, whatever is top of mind, a sort of a closing reflection.
Oh, I think top of mind for me is that this work is hard, but it's really important for our students. And I really appreciate the opportunity to learn together, and to see folks signing up to be part of the webinar feels really exciting too. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy, Melissa.
I think I would echo a lot of that. I'm super appreciative of the collaboration. I think that this is what needs to happen in schools. I think that there is a need for a massive shift in education that's only being accelerated by technology and the world around us. And I think it's exciting work. And I would just, my recommendation to all of you listening would be to recognize the uniqueness of your district and find your entry point, and then lean on others who are in this work, collaborate the heck out of things, and just stay optimistic and embrace your innovation mindset.
Love it. Thanks, Melissa. Sharon.
I agree with what Melissa just said. Also, just really appreciative of being part of this, and seeing the questions people had, and just knowing that more and more people are doing the work that I firmly believe is best for students, and is a critical shift we need to make, is just it's energizing for me to know that other people are engaging in this work. And what I wanted to share is I survey students frequently and parents about just their experience and what feedback we can get. And students shared in just a recent survey, what I like most about Compass is how each class has its own unique theme and focus. I also love how the work isn't traditional. We get to be creative and customize our projects in ways that fit us. I know that I have learned more here than I have anywhere else, and I'm grateful for that. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
That's what we want all of our schools to be. What beautiful feedback. All right. Well, we are at the end of the time here together today. We hope to continue the conversation with you. We have lots of resources on our website. We'll follow up with more resources in the chat and would love to stay in touch. So please reach out. Don't be strangers. Thank you so much to our three brilliant panelists for joining and taking time out of your incredibly busy lives and schedules. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks so much for joining.